everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. How is everyone feeling this week? Feeling a little better? There were a bunch of elections happening on Tuesday. I would say some fairly good results across the spectrum. Prop 50 passed here in California. Mamdani won in New York. Those are all good things. I mean, I've been burnt by electoral victories in the past for most of my life. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, that's it. And especially, hey, fascism's not about to respect the results of the ballot box. But still, for a moment, I'm going to feel happy about it. It was a nice bit of hope, a sea of despair. Hey, you know what else is a little bit of hope in a sea of despair? Why, that's today's episode, because today I'm talking to David J. Roth, and if you don't know who he is, I'm going to read you his bio right now. Raised in Ridgewood, New Jersey, journalist and writer David J. Roth started out his writing career writing and editing content for the backs of Topps trading cards. This led to writing for the Wall Street Journal sports blog, co-founding and editing his own sports blog, The Classical, contributing to Vice and The Baffler, as well as many other publications. In 2017, David became an editor-at-large at Deadspin, and 2 years later, he and the entire writing and editorial staff resigned, protesting major editorial interference from the private equity holding company that had bought the publication. The following year, David and a number of other former Deadspin writers formed Defector Media, one of the exciting new worker-owned journalism companies. And in the last 5 years, it has become one of the most well-regarded sites online. In addition to all of this, David also hosts the wonderful Defector podcast, The Distraction. There are two guys, who could make me laugh about Trump. And Trump's one of them. I guess, sure. Despite being a societal cancer, I guess he can be funny. But look, the thing is, most of the humor about him doesn't reach the level of a Bazooka Joe comic, okay? Because the thing is, at least this is for me, I don't want to speak for the rest of you, but he's such a destructive force that the humor has to be so incisive, so biting, that it has to outstrip and outpace my anger over the millions of lives he's destroying on a whim. So anyway, for real though, the two people are, one, Anthony Atamanuik, former guest, friend of the show. You may know from The President Show. He impersonated Trump for years. Tony gets at a dark core at the center of Trump in a way that no one else can, except for my guest today, who does it in a different medium. David's just a wonderful writer in general. I've been reading him for a long time. And much like Tony, he sees straight through to the wounded, writhing creature that lives at the center of Trump's being. So anyway, unsurprisingly, this was a wonderful episode. He's a great guest. We really get into the existential dissection of suburban malaise. We talk about political awakenings and morality and connections to injustice in our lives that we've seen, and it was great. I enjoyed talking to him so much I lost track of the time. We blew past the hour. So I hope you enjoy it. And coming up on the show, got a lot of great episodes in the pipeline. Just talked to Cassie Carlson from Gorilla Toss today. Claire Rousey, wonderful composer. She was great. Mark Hollander from Aksak Mabul, a big part of the rock and opposition movement in the 70s. Founded the label Cram Discs. Talked to him a lot about growing up in the wake of World War II and how that affected his existential path. So stay tuned for those, but for now, let's talk to David.
This is going to be a real easy ride. You're not going to remember anything the moment that we get off the call. I think it'll be great.
Well, am I not going to remember what happened because it was unmemorable? Or
So
because
boring.
okay, so
Unbelievable.
it wasn't.
Yeah, just spoonful after spoonful of white rice. That's what it's going to be. It'll fill you up, but it's not gonna nourish you.
Well, I don't know.
I can try to. I'll add some seasoning. We'll see what we do.
Well, I grew up in Pennsylvania. This is interesting in a certain sense, where like my lunch a lot of the times, my dad gave me $20 a week. That was my allowance and lunch money.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever I didn't spend on lunch, if I could reserve $12 to $15, I could buy a CD at the end of the week, right? So I tried to fill up as much as possible. If there was rice, I would get 2 helpings of rice.
Smart.
For my lunch.
This is a really good training for being like a freelance creative guy who's 24 living in a big city. Like that's basically like if I had gotten an allowance that had that amount of wiggle room in it, I think I would have done better. Like I would have seen fewer overdrafts in my early 20s.
I mean, I've said this so many times, both in real life and on podcasts, but when I was in grad school, I think I spent most of the time in grad school calling my bank, being like, can you please take this overdraft fee off? Because if you keep it on there, then it's just going to keep compounding and I'll never be able to dig myself out.
I want you to know I don't have those $35 right now. Like you've got to, like, we're both adults here. Yeah, and I know the feeling well.
So I feel like there's some kind of consonance here between us.
Yeah, just in the sense that we didn't do a great job early in our lives, but also like filling foods. Yeah, this is a good place to start. I've built friendships off less.
Well, okay, wait. I mean, when you say didn't do a great job, I didn't do a great job because I was self-aware. I don't have a good way to characterize this. I was self-aware, but not enough, perhaps. If everything's on a spectrum now, let's just say my self-awareness wasn't fully formed.
Yeah.
Enough to kind of be in the world, but not enough to have any kind of semblance of autonomy. If that makes any sense at all.
No, I think that makes sense. Explain autonomy in this context, though, because I feel like I'm right there with you, but I want to understand that aspect of it more.
I feel like for a large part of my life, up until my late 20s, I wasn't choosing in this kind of like Sartrean sense of choosing for oneself. I was just like, well, what am I supposed to do? What can I, there was a lot of stuff where, what can I do where I won't get in trouble, where no one's going to yell at me?
Yes. Yep. That's real as hell. That makes sense. And I think that does pretty much align with I say like not doing a good job as if I would like my life more if I had done anything in my 20s beyond like hang out and not break up with my girlfriend. Like everything that I did then was fun. It just was not like additive, that like I turned 30 and I didn't have much in the way of retirement savings. I didn't have a resume that was worth a shit. And like, so what I had, but like what I had was like a circle of friends that I was close with. And like the woman that I would get married to was like still with me and we were good. And like, that was more or less, and I was improving, I guess, as a writer. I was just doing it like in secret. No one was publishing my shit. And I wasn't really trying to get a lot of it published. And so it was the sort of thing where just like sort of mixing myself a drink and writing a short story that like 3 people would ever read was kind of like, if you replace that with me getting bylines and getting paid for them at that age, like I probably would have had a better quality of life, but also those would have been some stinky poo-poo blogs, I'm pretty sure. So maybe it's for the best that way.
What's the impetus? There's a lot here I want to get into, but what's the
I didn't even know if we had
like
started yet. I was just kind of bullshitting with you, but anyway, go for it.
Sure. This is look, I started a couple months after Marin. All right. So I have the same techniques, which is just start talking.
Good.
But the thing that jumped out to me was like you saying like writing short stories maybe for 3 people. What was the impetus behind wanting to even do that? Like when I write something, I have in mind like, well, this is going to be somewhere. And if I'm not going to try to make it, whether it's a script or a video or whatever, right? I don't do it. Like, I only wrote a movie because I got hired to write a movie.
Yeah. So I will tell you that I had big plans for these short stories, but the like small literary journals of the United States had, thought otherwise. They were,
Oh, okay.
but it was, and I also had like, so here's, I'll go back to the sort of the beginning of it. Like I'd always wanted to write, like, and I wrote fiction. I worked at the newspaper in college and stuff, but I didn't want to write stuff like that. Like I wanted to write novels, but also like it kind of seemed hard, and I didn't have any life experiences. Like nothing bad had ever happened to me. There was a limited number of things that I could write about. And so I graduated from college, got a job that was like a writing job, but it was like literally summarizing things for AOL's Digital Cities website. Like it was basically taking a restaurant review that was 5 sentences long and making it 3 sentences long so that people could read it on their like early cell phones. Just like about
their Nokias.
Yes, seriously, like just something that you'd have to like scroll it. Yes, I was like getting these restaurant reviews for Trattorias in North Jersey, BlackBerry ready, so that people could jump in with a sense of certainty and know that they were going to be able to get a Parmesan style meal.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, well,
rare in northern New Jersey.
I was going to say, this is the truest act of service journalism that I've done in my life, is making sure that people know that they got linguine alla vongole in there, and it's all right. It's not bad. That job was stupid, but I met people there that I was friends with, and we started like a writing group. That was like all of us had wanted to write fiction, and so that was part of like what kept me accountable and kept me writing, was that like every month we would get together at Grassroots Tavern in the East Village and read each other's short stories. And I've always needed like I need to know that I'd be disappointing somebody if I didn't do something to make me do it. Like that's like kind of, I'm shame motivated. I don't know what the term is here. I'm talking about myself like I'm a poorly trained spaniel or whatever, but there's something in there where it's like, it's not the treats. It's like the absence of guilt is the thing that gets me motivated. And I liked these people and I cared about their opinions and I wanted to get good at writing. Like, so that kept me busy in that regard. But this was also early enough. Like I'm pretty old. So there wasn't the sort of thing where in order to get something published somewhere, I would have to like go through the proper channels. Like there wasn't Blogspot yet. And if there was, it would have just been, a buoy in the middle of an expansive empty ocean.
Right.
Like I've been putting my words up, but nobody ever would have found them.
Right.
And so the idea of like, I wrote these stories and then I would like put them in an envelope. I'm still like drawing down on my collection of like big envelopes and little envelopes that I had for submissions when I was like 24 years old. That's like still how I, send a rent check or whatever. And I would send them to places. One place took a story, which was cool. And I think it's probably one of the better short stories that I wrote, but that's the only published piece of fiction I've ever had. And the rest of it was like, just, writing my shit, editing it, going over it with my friends and, then going to bars and rock shows. Like that was, so if that's that was.
Sure. That's one's 20s.
Yeah. And I think that like that, I don't regret any of that. Really, like I think there'll be a moment probably at the end of my life where like someone in a lab coat looks at the odometer on my liver and is like, explain to me what happened here. But I think that like for the time being, like that was, I don't know, like I wouldn't say that I have a lot of coworkers that are like really, really good at writing and editing and like being adults in a way. And they're like 31 and they like just scratched all that shit out under difficult circumstances as if it was a normal thing to do. And as much as I admire them, that is something that I truly do not understand. Like people that were like high functioning 25-year-olds it's like a cryptid. It's a werewolf to me. Like I believe that it's possible for such a thing to exist, but I have not experienced it for myself. I don't know anyone like that.
Yeah. No, I am the same way. I think, and I feel like maybe we had some kind of similar childhoods. Maybe. Well, I mean,
Maybe.
I'll ask you about it then. But like,
Yeah.
I was a smart kid. I had my parents were, let's see here, my grandparents immigrated. So what? My parents are first generation, right? So I was the one who was supposed to be a doctor or a lawyer. So that was all the expectations. I was all the expectations were around getting good grades. If I got an A minus and I didn't do any work, my parents would be disappointed because they're like, well, you didn't do any work. If you had done any kind of work, you could got an A or an A plus, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think those expectations are the ones that formed the same thing in me, which is like, I need a deadline. I need something. I said this to I handed in a script for something to a producer, and I was like, we were getting notes on it. And I was like, do we get a sticker? Do I get
Yeah.
a pat on the head for this? And he laughed uncomfortably, but like,
You're like, no, dude, I'm serious. I'm going to need you to get some stickers.
Yeah. That's really what I am. I have been Pavlovianly. Is that an adverb?
Absolutely. I mean, it has the ring of, it sounds so correct when you say it.
Trained to expect that from, and when I have to self-motivate, it's very difficult, and then I have to really kind of push through.
Yeah.
But I think it's not, there's no trick to it. There's no like grand kind of like psychological explanation other than I spent 20 some odd years from grade school through grad school with that as the motivator, as opposed to making things of worth or making things of meaning.
I definitely push back against that at an early age. I mean, everything that you were saying is true to a point for me as well. And I think at some point, like if I didn't have to work hard, I was happy to make good grades. I think there was a moment where it was 8th grade. I just was fucking up. I think mostly to see what would happen. Like if there were any consequences for it. Like I worked hard on certain things. I just neglected school. Like I practiced basketball all the time. I got as good as I would ever get. And
Sure.
But it was like, that was the thing that I was focused on. And it wasn't the sort of thing where I had any idea that I was like, just if you get up 1,000 shots a day, like you're going to wind up starting small forward at the University of North Carolina. Like it can really happen for you. I fucking knew that wasn't going to happen for me. Like I was little until like basically the end of high school and or halfway through, I guess. And so a lot of that, but I did that instead of like doing my homework or doing the necessary reading there was like classes that I cared about and I did that work. And then there were classes that I didn't. And that was like the time that I would have spent doing my math homework. I spent shoplifting baseball cards and practicing basketball. And
hold on. Two things. One, did you not, and maybe I don't know how old you are, but like
I'm
Muggsy
66
Bogues.
years old. Yes, Muggsy Bogues
was like, well, he's short, he could do it.
And I had all kinds of ideas. I could absolutely derail your podcast by letting you know the types of basketball players that I was comping myself to at the time. The guy that was my favorite player on the Nets, which was my home state team at the time, the New Jersey Nets, was Drazen Petrovic. And I basically tried to do the things that Drazen Petrovic could do, which was like dribble effectively with both hands and shoot the basketball from anywhere. He wasn't really very interested in defense. I realized once I was on teams that I would have to be more interested in defense than him because I wasn't as good at the other shit as he was. But that was it. And I think there was a part of me that was like I wanted to get good because I wanted to be good. I think the idea of like a future hadn't occurred to me. And I guess like in 8th grade, it's interesting to hear you talk about the way that your parents were kind of like directing you towards careers to a certain extent. Like my parents thought I was smart, and I mean, I thought I was decently smart too, but it was, I think they sort of were like, it'll happen one way or another. Like, and maybe I wind up, my parents are both attorneys. They might've been like, maybe that's what he wants to do. I think they realized I didn't really have the like doctor brain thing, but as much as they, got mad at and punished me when I was in 8th grade for screwing up. And as much as that was like a sort of a defining, maybe this is where my like need to not disappoint others originated, was that I was like, I wonder if my parents would be disappointed if I did a bad job. And then I like found out that the answer was yes.
Yeah.
They would indeed be disappointed by that. But in that, I think the thing that sort of changed for them after that, like they realized that I was going to do what I wanted to do, and they didn't like it necessarily, but I think that they were also like, I was doing enough that they were more or less okay with it. And I wasn't screwing up in ways that were going to like be on my permanent record or that were like risky to anyone else. You know, like I wasn't a bad kid. I just wasn't a very good student. And that, I think that if there's any regret that I have about that, it's not that I didn't like try harder in high school necessarily, because I like tried hard at the stuff that I meant to try hard at. I feel like in college, I kind of was a bit of a hump. And I think now about like the classes that I had, and like going in there, having read like 75 pages of a 300-page book was like, that's just fucking horseshit. Because not just because I was like wasting my parents' money or wasting my time or whatever, because I did get something out of those classes. And I got something out of like learning how to talk about something that I've only read less than a third of. Like that's actually a pretty valuable life skill too. But I did like that work, and I just didn't have good work habits. Like I wanted to read those books. I just didn't. I wasn't focused enough, or I like had some other sort of thing on my mind, or I was depressed. I mean, that's the other sort of variable in that particular bit. But I think that
like depressed, like clinically,
yeah. I mean, I
depressed.
Yeah, I had a brief period where I was medicated. Mostly, I've just been in therapy for a lot of my life, and a lot of it, I think, just with college in general. This is like the sort of like developing skills part of it. I went to a liberal arts college. I lived in a dorm all 4 years. I mean, it was not the sort of like real world experience that would necessarily be useful once you like go live in a city, which is what I did right after. And which I had never done before. I grew up in the suburbs. Like it, there was a lot to learn there. But I think sort of figuring out how to get something out of yourself when you're really not up to doing anything was like, that was the work of those 4 years, was kind of figuring that out. Like how to get up and down, even though I wanted to like take a 4-hour nap. And then I got better, like I was less depressed by the time my time in school was done than I was when I, was at my worst. And it's been with me up and down all through my life, but it's like something that I'm lucky to have a version of it that I can manage if I am up to managing it.
But is it, so is it situational? Because the way everyone that's depressed in my life, it's medication, or like there's not, obviously like the situation makes things work, obviously like this year as fascism deepens, it's all of my friends who have mental health issues are struggling even more so.
Yeah,
but like
I have too, and it's hard though. In some ways, it's like because of everything being so bad, there's a part of this is the bit, the sort of the skill that you can learn in managing it. If you have a version of it that's manageable this way, is there are times where I can like I'll be feeling really, really bad. And I can sort of say to myself, not necessarily in a way that makes me feel it usefully, but I think it's helpful all the same to know, like, this is not you, this is everything else. Or at least, like, everything else is enough of a factor in this that it's like, you're not having some sort of, like, major mood disorder flare-up. You just, like, watched a bunch of videos of ice guys pushing people down flights of stairs. And it doesn't make it any easier to take. And it certainly doesn't make you feel better. But like, yeah, contextually, I mean, it has all been kind of contextual, I think, in my life. It's always sort of there, but it comes and goes. I mean, I think it's like, I don't feel as depressed when I am like on vacation or like in the ocean,
Sure.
But it is, it's hard. Like I guess I should just be counting my lucky stars that I have a version of it that goes away enough. I think that I know people that have really struggled with more serious versions of this and that will be medicated forever with it. And it's like, that is a lot harder than what I have. Like what I have is basically like a force multiplier for a lot of my bad habits and less helpful instincts.
Yes.
But that's like, that could also be any number of other things. Like I might just be doing that anyway.
Well, no, because I want to get a little more context for it because, you know, if that's there, I'm trying to figure out, you know, as narcissistic as this is, I'm using myself on the show as a baseline.
No,
I'm not a good baseline, by the way. I'm a weird person, but like as to figure out other people. And I don't have any kind of depression that's not coming from the outside. That's not being forced on me by existence. The arrow is straight pointing into my skeleton.
Yeah.
In the sense that like stewing in a dilapidated capitalist country that is collapsing in on itself as it's being looted by the dumbest fucking people
literally
in the world, right?
Worst people that our culture has created since the Civil War. Nice to think about.
That is a succinct way of putting it, and why I enjoy reading your essays. But
thank you.
So I didn't have any of that stuff when I was younger, and I think we're near around the same age, in the sense that like mental health stuff wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so this stuff was in you when you were younger. And the difference where I was frightened of fucking up my future, I was frightened of, I wouldn't really, you mentioned shoplifting earlier, that I was just like, oh God, I wouldn't do that. You know, I wouldn't do anything where I could get in trouble, where there was some kind of, in my brain at least, permanent repercussions, because I was so scared. And this has been a vision. I've written this into like almost every script, someone saying some version of this, of like they envision themselves in the future, because I did this, of like I sitting in a ratty recliner with this like stained Dukes of Hazzard TV tray, my life being like basically like the size of the studio, and just watching on like an old pre-flat screen TV,
cathode ray lifestyle,
CRT, right? You know, old reruns of like Everybody Loves Raymond, and that and eating like lean cuisine like that. I could imagine like if I fucked up, that's where I was going. So it was this future vision was so terrifying to me that was the motivation. Really, it was a lot of fear. It was like a fear of fucking up, fear of disappointing other people, and it wasn't until I moved to New York to do comedy, which is what this kind of like hidden desire that I had.
What were you doing before that? You were just doing school stuff?
Grad school. So this is like professor. I was a philosophy professor.
Wow. All right. Nice.
About to start my dissertation. So yeah, but I didn't want to. But so this is the thing. I'm curious how much you said you want to be a novelist. How much of that was your own? How much of that desire actually peaked out from within everything? How much did depression that may have been unacknowledged did dampen that? Like, what was going on internally when you were younger?
So when I was younger, I think I was a happy child, and then I think I was like a conflicted adolescent. And then by the time I got to high school, I was just kind of sort of doing my own thing. I had, two groups of friends that I am still close with today, that I had been friends with, since elementary school. And so I wasn't lonely, and I didn't feel like I was failing really, but I was also, I think that there was a part of me, this is like a classic sort of like 90s way of being too, that I was sort of convinced that I was like seeing through the bullshit to a certain extent. But I don't know what I envisioned doing with that knowledge or foresight or x-ray vision or whatever it was that I sort of thought I had.
Wait, what was the bullshit? When you say seeing through the bullshit,
all
was
the
the bullshit like your parents' stuff?
It was like suburban things. I think it was basically like the idea that, and I think that that's part of what like being like wanting to write novels. I wanted to, write screenplays and direct. I was really into watching movies. That was another thing that I did instead of doing homework. And I like all of that. Especially, this was also, given the age that I was literally like working in a video store when Quentin Tarantino first became a thing. And so the idea of being like what if there was a guy that was basically like an older, weirder version of you that had the same job as you, and then he got to make Reservoir Dogs, which at the time was like the coolest shit that I, could imagine in my life. And I was like, oh, that. All right, I'll just do that then. That seems cool. And I think at the time, when I was like awakening to wanting to do those sort of creative things, what I mostly knew was that I didn't want to like work, I didn't want to be an attorney. I didn't want to things didn't really like matter as much to me, but I didn't really know what like the world was like. I think I just sort of saw a lot of the things that were kind of around me in this like pretty conservative suburb. I was like, I liked that it was quiet at night. I liked, lawns and, it's like bunny rabbits hopping around in your backyard. It's a pleasant place to grow up. But I think there was a part of me that was like, this isn't where I want to spend the rest of my life.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
And so the idea of like, and I don't know where in Pennsylvania you grew up, but I grew up close enough to New York City that like, the way that my parents used the city for me and my sister was more or less, it was like an amenity. You could go in and there would be theater and museums and restaurants that would like legitimately sort of broaden your horizons, that were outside of the sort of North Jersey stuff that was around us, all of which I also loved, but which was like, provincial. And so I had this sense that like I would like basically my goal growing up where I grew up was like someday I'm going to live in New York City or I'm going to live in Los Angeles. And what I would do there, I had like not thought through in the least. I was just sort of like, you'll just do fucking city shit. Like I'll do whatever. What is Jerry Seinfeld's job? I'll do that, and like that. I think that I was stubborn enough that I actually did spend like 10 years more or less doing that. That like my 20s, I lived in a series of places that I could afford to live in New York City. And I hung out with my friends and I wrote my little stories and I worked sort of shitty jobs, but I was like,
dated a 17-year-old.
I did, yeah, obviously. And Michael Richards and I were close. We vacationed together. We're still friends.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But there was a lot of the, like, all the stuff I was doing was kind of like, that was what I wanted from my life, was to have that life. I wanted to have like a girlfriend that I liked and friends that I cared about and bars that I liked. And I think I did want other things than that. I mean, I was still writing during that time. I was still kind of trying to figure out how to, I mean, you had this experience, I imagine, if you're doing comedy in New York City, as fun as it can be to sort of be doing your thing in a city like New York, the economic realities of doing it here are such that you can't just fucking kick it. Like I wasn't living in some apartment that my parents bought me and I didn't have to work. Like I had to work, and I didn't want to. And so much of the jobs that I, took were the sort of thing where it was like, does this cover enough that I can keep doing the things that I want to do? I wasn't really trying to have there be extra one way or the other.
Yeah. The best day job I had was some temp job at some law firm where you got free sodas. That was the best of them. You got a couple free Diet Cokes if you wanted them.
Temping was kind of wild. I did a decent amount of that. And it was sort of like feeling like I was kind of like infiltrating the world of normal people. In those, like, like you go in there, you're just sort of like, so you could just have as many of these Skittles as you want, huh? That's pretty sick, actually. I would not trade places with you, but this is a great snack room that you've got. And like, I did a lot of that. The job that I got, I think the day job that I kept the longest in my 20s, so yeah, it was in my 20s, was at Topps, the baseball card company.
Oh, yeah.
And I worked there for like a year and a half, and I liked it. It was like, it wasn't an especially demanding job, but it was like that was when I was starting to write nonfiction stuff too, because I had a fast internet connection at work and not that much work to do. So I would be like commenting on blogs or writing for blogs or whatever. But the gig itself was fun. Like I grew up collecting cards. I wanted to be near it. Every now and then, like Gary Sheffield would walk through the office and I'd be like, nice. And that was all very cool to me. But it was also like, I mean, not coincidentally, it didn't pay great, but it was like the first job I had where I like had health insurance. And I was kind of like, oh, this is way less stressful than the thing I was doing before. Like that actually, like it was the beginning of getting a sense that like having a job was not simply admitting defeat in your creative pursuits, but was the sort of thing that could make your life a little bit easier, if also sometimes more annoying, because I had like, They wanted us there at 8:15 in the morning. That's never been a skill that I've had.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Also, like, why do you need to be there at 8:15 in the morning to make baseball cards?
There's no reason for any of the. It's all arbitrary. This is, when I ask a lot of the questions on the show before, I was saying something about, I forget exactly what we were talking about, but like a lot of people are given a script and they're just like, yeah, I'll follow this. This seems like a nice way to live.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just do that. I won't deviate from it, really. I'm going to have kids. Do I want kids? No, but I'm going to have kids because that's what's expected of me. And they don't make choices for themselves outside of this script. And they're just like, yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do. Right.
Yeah.
And the major question that's behind all of the questions on the show is like, how do you ever break out of that? What is the thing? Especially, and why I'm so interested is because like it took me forever to realize that it was imposed on me by my parents, and not in a malicious way, but just like that's what parents do in some cases, or culture. Like, you're supposed to do this thing. And I didn't know I had the autonomy to choose for myself. And more to the point, I guess I maybe knew, but that I knew it was going to be tough. And I was trying to figure out, I didn't have the money to like do it. My New York time was like either scrounging for money, selling my possessions to pay for rent, getting a temp job for a while. And then after work, going to UCB, taking classes, performing at like 11 p.m. at night, taking 3 trains to get back to Greenpoint, and then like trying to get a couple hours sleep before you start over again.
This was like the real dingy UCB that was like under the Gristedes on the west side.
26th Street.
That place smelled of mold. I saw friends do shows there. You shouldn't have spent too much time there, man. You should really get your respiratory system checked out.
Well, I mean, there was, I don't know. I still think about coming out from those curtains. I still I mean, if there's a place where that manufactured some of the best comedy of the last, like,
oh yeah. I mean,
like it was, and that smell is part of it, buddy. That smell is integral to Jason Mantzoukas. That smell is integral to Amy Poehler.
If he had not breathed in the spores that were generating in the walls there, so that really, what you said makes a lot of sense to me, and it resonated with my experience. It's something I've been thinking about a bit myself of late too, because I wrote something for the Flaming Hydra newsletter not long ago about One Battle After Another, which moved me a lot. Everybody likes it. It's a good movie. But the bit that I was thinking about from it, because I think that I, as a kid in the suburbs, had this sense that if I kind of, not even, I use like the Bill Clinton locution, like worked hard and played by the rules, I think there was a part of me that was like, you're going to be fine. And that is, how privilege sort of manifests in a lot of cases. But I think it's also like, I did think I was going to be fine. Yeah. Like I trusted that I didn't, for all my bad habits, like I hadn't obliterated myself. Like I didn't really want it that bad. Like I drank too much, but I didn't fall on the train tracks. That there was like a thing where I was like able to, there was something in me that wanted to survive all of my bad decisions, and that believed that I would. And then this is the suburban part of it. The thing that I think turns like suburban kids into suburban adults. And I don't mean to be too pejorative about the suburbs. I just mean that sort of the idea of what you're talking about, the idea of everything running on rails. I think there was this sense that like, if I did all of those things, everything would work out for me. And at some point I stopped believing that was the case. And not that it like inspired me to, get a bunch of flat front khakis and get a real job or whatever, like the fucking third act of a Judd Apatow movie. It's like, what it was basically was that I saw that, like, I believe that systems were functioning such that someone like me who didn't destroy themselves would be okay. And then as I saw, through experience, I think trying to sort of like go through the proper channels and seeing that stuff didn't work. And this was stuff that was kind of, I hesitate to say it was like activism because I was very polite about it, but that I was pretty active, with like moveon.org around the time of the start of the Iraq War. And, I led a delegation to my congressman in New Jersey, and then I led one to the Chilean embassy to try to get the UN to vote against the, some authorization that was going to be up for a vote there. And, we did everything that we were supposed to do. At a time in my life when I was really not a very responsible guy, rose to the occasion on stuff like that. I mean, to the extent that I was possible for me at the time to do it. Can I interrupt you? Yeah.
What motivated? What was it? A moral?
I sensed that this was something very wrong.
Yeah.
That was going to happen. And I was like, if you see something like this, then you've got to do what you can to try to stop it. And the limits of my imagination, and I think also just in general, the way that things were in like 2003, there were people that it's like, there were black bloc types throwing bricks through windows and stuff. That wasn't my personality at the time. And I was always kind of skeptical of that. I think because I grew up someplace quiet and comfortable. But I remember like doing all of those things and being like, well, I did my part. And this, all these people that were motivated. I mean, like, I can't say any of them have become like lifelong friends, but the people that I met doing those visits, the people that like wanted to come and ask the Chilean ambassador to like do what's right. It was a wide enough array of people that I was like, this is it. Like, this is the, a version of America that I can believe in. This is people that like are willing to interrupt their daily lives to say that this thing they think is wrong and to try to do all of the things that structurally, like just to go through the door that's marked, file complaint here and file right. Your complaint. And it didn't do shit. It destroyed the country. I mean, I think in like what is happening now is a boomerang coming back that was thrown in 2003. Yeah. And
I would go back for this is my dividing line. Whenever certainly. I talk about, I mean, sure, you can go back like wave, but like to me, the dividing line between a kind of dying empire and us just living in its corpse was the Supreme Court stopping the recount in Florida.
Yeah. Yep.
Because that was the first time where there was a naked abuse of power in front of our faces. And they were basically like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, you got to fucking wear it. That's it. And I remember that feeling very strongly. I mean, that was like right after I graduated from college. And, that moving into New York, I was here on September 11th. All of that. All of those things happening, like all of that felt much more like living in history than anything that I had experienced up to that point. And the fact that it coincided, I think literally coincidentally with me becoming a grown-up, and living on my own, like it resonated that much more. But it was also like none of the shit that I remember from college, like people like protesting against like the whatever G8 in Seattle or whatever it was and stuff was like, I didn't disdain it, but I was kind of like, all right, I mean, if that's what you need to do, like, but all of those things sort of happening around me and seeing how poorly and how cravenly and how cruelly the people that were, in charge of what I think I had assumed was a reasonable, more or less reasonable world, to see how they responded to it. I think it didn't like light a fire under me, but I think that at some point I was somewhere in there, I was coming towards the realization that these systems are more fragile and more corrupt than I understood them to be.
Oh yeah.
And that like and in some ways there's something sort of liberating in that. It's a scary feeling, and like certainly the moment that we're in now feels more lawless than any that I've experienced. But there was also this idea then that I was sort of like, well, all right, if I don't have to like get on some sort of track that will end with me living in the same sort of town that I grew up in with 2 kids and a wife and driving to work every day, then I could do whatever. It was just also this was the other part of it. I think that I wrote about One Battle After Another, and that I've, I think it's still something that I'm coming to grips with. There are more things that you could do with your life than you can imagine as a suburban kid. But also, you're not necessarily going to get what you want. That this is going to be like a struggle that you participate in for your entire life, and you get as far as you're going to get, and you do the work that you can do. And that's that. Like, I think that I had this idea of sort of a linear trajectory in American life and in my own life that I don't believe in anymore. Not to say that things can't go up and to the right, but they're not invariably going to do that. They're not like going to do that naturally, and all you need to do is like catch the wave and let it happen for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is separate, and I have a couple questions based on what you said, but like when I see, and I'm a socialist, but when I see there are like diehard
Do I need
Marxists,
to say that I'm also a socialist at this point? Did I not make that sufficiently clear just now? But yes.
But like I'm saying, because like I'll see some diehard Marxists online who think of capital as a scientific work. And they're like, well, if we just do this, this, and this, as if it's a recipe for communism.
Right. One weird trick.
Yeah. And I'm just like, well, no. When a paradigm collapses, I mean, if you really read I'm a Marxian, and I'm a Marxian because I've read like David Harvey, and I've read a bunch of, and it's like, it's not scientific. It doesn't like collapse into communism. It's like, it can collapse into what's happening now, which is fascism, when capitalism, fails or intensifies or whatever it is. And it's, there's no necessity to that. Sorry. I don't know why that popped into my head
I mean, I think it speaks to the thing that I think the impression that I had that I lost as I grew up, which was, I think, to the stupid and extremely dating me as the age that I am metaphor that came into my mind. And what you were saying was the idea of like when they blow up the Death Star in the first Star Wars, where it's like, fucking put the biscuit in the basket. It's away. Like, you did it. Like, you found the hole that blows up the thing. Like, it's not how the world works, Yeah. And also, like, what happens after the thing blows up? Like, there's a lot of stuff that I think I hadn't considered it because I was like 17 years old, but I also like hadn't, in the way that you can't as a younger person, considered how long life is and can be, and how much shit there is in it, and how much you have to do. And that's like, I don't know, like that. I mean, obviously I prefer it to the alternative. I'm glad that I've had as long as I've had. I hope I have a whole other half of my life as long as the one I just had. But I don't know, like there's a disillusionment and a sort of like a melancholy that comes with it that I am spending a lot of time sort of sitting in. I don't know if that's just like being a person in their mid 40s, or if that is the moment, or if it's just something that everybody kind of deals with. But I think
melancholy, this is the thing I've come to. The constituent state of human existence is melancholy.
Yeah.
Because this is cribbing from Heidegger. So apologies, because he was a Nazi, but
I definitely knew you were cribbing from Heidegger. I'll tell you that. That's one thing that I absolutely had front of mind.
I mean, everyone's saying it to me. I'm at a general meeting, and
tears in their eyes.
And an executive is
Our
like,
beautiful Martin.
Was that Heidegger?
Anyway, so go ahead. Crib from Heidegger.
But because the horizon of death is always there for human beings, right? It will always temper anything else, right? The knowledge of your finite existence, I guess, unless you're an evangelical or some shit like that, will always temper everything in life. And maybe you can kind of like move away from that feeling, but it will always be there in the background lurking. Yeah. No matter what. And always there, and in your most defenseless moments, like last night when at 3 a.m. and I woke up and I was just like, oh shit, I've got what, like maybe 35, 40 years, who knows? Yeah. So I think the very constituent molecule, the constituent particle of human existence is melancholy.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that sounds, I think, maybe worse than it is. That like, it's all, you don't get to win life, but you can have a really great ride. You can do a lot of like, and what is winning that like without death, life is less meaningful. I think that there's like to a certain extent. I mean, it's not a popular idea. I don't look forward to dying, but I do feel like the stakes are heightened by it. And at this point, the idea of there's nothing that you can do necessarily that is going to change the process of, like getting older and dying. And like, there's also sort of nothing, this is the bit that I have a harder time sitting with is that, there's really nothing that I personally can do. And I think that most individuals can do to change the way that the world is.
No.
And I don't know that I believed that it was possible, when I was like leading a bunch of people from suburban New Jersey to go some fucking Republican congressman's office and talk about how they got to let Hans Blix and the missile inspectors do their work. Like, did I think he was going to say yes? Like, not really, I don't think. But I think there was a part of me that even understood then, before I had sort of settled into the, more wised up melancholy of middle age, there was a part of me that was like, well, you got to fucking do it anyway. Like, you got to tell
I will
them.
stump for that position.
Yeah.
You have to do it anyway. Not from this is something I thought of it from an existentialist position. You have to do it anyway because you have to plant that flag in the world. And then I talked to Chris Hedges on the show years ago.
Yep.
And he was saying something like that. And I was like, yeah, because it's an existentialist planting your flag. He's like, no, because you can actually help someone. You can actually do some good in the world. Yes, you will not be able to change the superstructures of capitalism,
right.
But you can help. He teaches in prisons, right? He's helped those people.
Yeah.
Right.
There's something really meaningful to that. I feel like I haven't helped enough people, but doing that to me, this is the selfish argument for that, or a selfish argument for trying to plant that flag, is that at least you get to fucking respect yourself after you do it.
Yep.
And I think that that is like a big motivator too. I mean, as much as I joke around about like not wanting to let people down, I don't want to let myself down either. I don't want to feel like a fucking coward at the end of the day. I don't want to feel like I was incapable of action at a moment that needed it. And it's like that doesn't mean that I'm going to like blow up a pipeline, like everybody's got to get in where they fit in, but like just rolling over and taking it does not sit right with me. And at a moment like this, but at any moment, it's just one of those things that like you have to be able to look yourself in the eye at the end of it.
Yeah.
I joke around a lot with coworkers about if I write some big politics thing and I'm like, this is the one that's going to change everything. This is the blog that's going to do it. Like,
you have to have that. Hold on. Literally everything I do in the back of my head, I'm like, this is the thing.
Yeah. I think that JD Vance is going to resign when he reads my description of his face. And like, I know it's not, I mean, it's the joke you have to make because it's like, nothing is going to make JD Vance feel shame. Like the thing that would have stopped Donald Trump is like more people voting for the person running against him, sadly, or like Merrick Garland. It's like all this shit that like I have no control over, all of this like stupid, unmanageable, worthless shit and cynical people that are sort of like checked out at it one way or the other. But like you have your own garden to tend to, and that's the bit that I kind of like have tried to like in doing all of this stuff, doing the few things that I do that make me feel like I can respect myself. It feels better than not doing them, I guess.
Yeah. So going back to some of the stuff we were saying before and continuing on with this though, the thing that I've had in my back of my head was, where do you think your moral sense developed? Because to even go to your congressperson, right? To even have the kind of like preconditions for that to be something where you're like, I'm going to take action here. There has to be some kind of moral belief lurking in the background, I would assume. Yeah. So where did that develop?
So it's interesting. Like my parents are good people, and they're like, but they're liberals. That like I think that they both, they were like opposed to the Vietnam War, and I'm sure that they marched, against it to a certain extent. But I was not raised in an activist family or an activist sort of tradition one way or another, and like I grew up in a conservative environment.
Conservative? How?
Oh, the town was conservative.
Oh, just everything was kind of.
Yeah, it was. I mean, like it's less so now, but it was like conservative in the sense that like our Congress person when I was growing up was a moderate Republican woman named Marge Rockema, who would probably at this point be like the 40th leftmost member of the House of Representatives, but at the time was just basically like classic Eisenhower type Republican shit. And so that was normal for me. These are a town full of like Catholics with, nice houses. And I grew up Reformed Jewish, like went through bar mitzvah. That was that. I wouldn't say that a great deal of my moral sense came from that.
Interesting.
I mean, to a certain extent, I think that like, I just am not, I think that the extent to which Judaism has influenced my moral sense is cultural and not religious. I just don't know enough about the tradition necessarily, but I think that there was a sense of right and wrong, and then also of sort of like where we fit in the broader sort of like, not just in the town that I was growing up in, but like feeling a little bit different, knowing that other people saw me a little bit different. And then also, like reading a lot and watching a lot of movies and getting a sense of, what did and didn't resonate with me. I feel like it's easier now in some ways to like get a maybe shallow, but a broad sort of political identity in a world where finding that sort of stuff is easier. I didn't really like know leftist things or see them in my life until I was in college. And the idea of, I mean, maybe I'm equating a moral sense with left politics, which is a little glib maybe, but I think that like for me, that is like basically sort of how I understand the world is in terms of who's got what and what they're doing with it. And and I think that I grew into that, and I have generally trusted my stuff on it, my instincts. So I have, like to the extent that I feel imposter syndrome-y about any of this, it's that I haven't done a lot of like deep theoretical reading on it, and that I'm sort of feeling my way towards my understanding of the world morally. But I feel like my instincts are okay, and I, try to check myself, and that's basically like all I've got.
Yeah, but that's where I'm trying to interrogate, because I've come to the conclusion that morality, there's no argument you can make for morality that someone can't just go, well, I don't care about that. I'm going to do the thing I want to do anyway.
We're living in it.
Exactly.
I think this is basically it. Like the idea of it was always there. The idea of like doing the right thing was a part of life, how I was raised. It was like certainly in the culture or whatever. But then I think there was always this appeal to the idea. And I think this is probably what I was like playing at when I was like stealing packs of Upper Deck cards from the Walgreens in town or whatever, was what if you don't? What if that's fake? And at this point, like we're living in, I think, the complete inversion of that idea of like doing the right thing for the right thing's sake. But in some ways that makes it feel more valuable to me, that like, just because you can do anything, that means I think it makes it more meaningful when you try to live more responsibly than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's part of the thing I've been thinking of over the last 9 years, which is if morality is just a feeling that can be inculcated in one, how do you create the mass conditions for it to be a feeling for a population?
Yeah.
And I don't have an answer. It's just been something, I just have the broad mechanics, which are, you have to create a critical mass. That's really it. I mean, most things, I think, we're still living in the corpse of the Enlightenment. And so there's this knee-jerk tendency to think that an argument is going to do the job. And it does in some cases. It does I became a vegetarian 20 years ago because I read philosophical arguments about vegetarianism. And I'm like, I think
another satisfied Peter Singer customer.
Another satisfied Peter Singer customer. But they're knockdown arguments as far as I'm concerned. I'm not thrilled with his overall project.
He's a fucking goober overall, but he did get it right on that one. That's the one big MVP season in a career that has otherwise had its ups and downs.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you just have to, so sometimes an argument will work. There's like the kind of boundary edge conditions where it could go one way or the other, right? But in most of stuff is, and that's why I was kind of like, well, where did this instinct form? Because my instinct formed, it was definitely my parents had a very strict sense of right and wrong. And through their boomers grew up right after the Holocaust. And I had this kind of sense of justice and injustice drilled into my head.
Yeah.
From an early age. And then I learn about Black Flag, and I learn about Rage Against the Machine and Sonic Youth, and all these bands start pushing me. And I don't understand it necessarily. I can't articulate it, but it's pushing me in a certain direction. I mean, I can't, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's a feeling. I couldn't articulate this stuff until I started studying philosophy. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah. It's the same. So this is another, I mean, I had a similar thing where I think that like art and literature formed my understanding of the world much more than any, other experience that I had, just because I wasn't having a lot of experiences. I was a suburban high school kid, but like Slaughterhouse-Five pushed me a mile, down the road. Sure. The other bit that I'll say, so I think that I had a sense of humanity, bred into me by my parents, and then sort of like furthered by the stuff that I, read and admired and watched and admired and wanted to create. I mean, that was like what I wanted my sort of work to be like. And then, I mean, I already had decently left-wing politics, but when I worked at Vice in like 2014, we organized the newsroom, and I had not been a part of that sort of thing before. Like I had done, the idea of like moveon.org was literally like you put your email in a field and then you start getting emails and then you reply to them. And that's how, but it was all very much something that you could do at home. And the experience of like Vice was a lousy place to work. I had a lot of fun there, and I am very grateful to have gotten to work with the people that I got to work with. But it was exploitive, and that was part of the value proposition for the people that were in charge of it. They were like bragged about it, they treated us like shit. And that was part of the way that they like showed out to the rich people that they were raising money from. They were like, look, these guys will fucking work for cocaine. These guys will work for snacks.
Yikes.
And I guess I hadn't fully appreciated the depths of, rich person sadism at the time. I think that was sort of that helped straighten me out on that. But then also just the experience of seeing all of these other people, a lot of whom, like were younger than me, lived in cooler neighborhoods, had just their lives were different than mine. But everybody getting worked over one way or another. I remember I've told this story on other podcasts, and I worry about like dining out on something. It was like profound to me, but it's like the more you talk about it, the less profound it feels. At the Writers Guild of America building in Lower Manhattan, when we were before, we had gotten people to sign cards and stuff. This was a big conference room. A bunch of people showed up, and everybody at some point was like just basically talking about all of the shit that they had to struggle through in their lives, despite having full-time jobs at a media company that was at the time valued in the billions of dollars. And everybody was like, yeah, like I have like $10 in the bank. Like I have to like do all these extra jobs. I get up at like fucking 5 every day and like work a whole ass job before I come here. Like, and I think that like all of seeing the extent to which there is a universality to suffering that you would not necessarily guess at from the surfaces of whatever it is that you're encountering. Like, and then also knowing that, everybody, some people were bearing it better than others. Some people, like had more family money than others. Some people like had better living situations or whatever than others, or partners with good jobs or whatever. But like realizing, I guess, that this is so trite sounding, but it's hard to come up with another way of saying it. The extent to which we really were all the same in terms of like how we were experiencing this and how we were viewed by the people that were in charge of things was very, very illuminating to me.
Yeah. You were all being exploited at the same rate.
Yeah. Yep. At the same rate. And that's exactly that. Because it wasn't, even if the experience of it was different, which I think is the way that like you're acculturated to sort this sort of thing, which is like, well, it's, whatever, like this is a rich kid, he's dealing with it fine, or like this person has like no money, they're getting it much worse. It's like the people that are pissing on us are just they're just pissing, man. Like it doesn't matter who gets in the way of it. And that this, I think that by being able to sort of like step out of that, the sort of like taxonomic understanding of the world, which was always like sort of, because I felt like I grew up, in the sort of the isolation of the suburbs, I wanted to understand stuff outside of my experience. And I didn't, if I wasn't going to be experiencing it myself, I would be like, all right, well, like I know all the movies that this guy directed and I can't see a lot of them because they're not on VHS in my hometown or whatever. Or like this band has a member of that band in it. So therefore they're related to each other. Like that is, it's useful, but it would just like, it created, that was a structure that I felt like I could sort of know in an abstracted way. And then there was the experience of organizing that newsroom, remove the abstraction from it. That it was basically like it wasn't the sort of thing where it was like, they're doing this for this or that theoretical reason. And this is the counter to that works best or whatever, some sort of, fucking dungeon master guide version of being in the world. It was like, this is really happening. These are the options that we have about it, in terms of redress or making it stop. And the tools that we have to do that work, like, are in this room. Like, it's us. And that's, and, I think that it wasn't, like something that I didn't know, but I feel like I understood it in a more complete way for that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think now. I'm wondering what it is. And maybe it's just, again, the early 21st century that did this to us. But, my parents were exploited and they're just like, well, that's life, right? Yeah. My mom, before she retired, was a teacher. My dad was a business guy. And they both hated. My mom loved teaching. She loved teaching the kids, but she hated the bureaucracy. Right. My dad, I don't think wanted to do what he did, but he did because he thought that's what you had to do to support your family. Right. And their reaction to being exploited was like, that's irreducible. There's nothing you're going to do about it. Right. And I think older Gen X folks, same kind of feeling, and maybe they're like more disaffected or something like that.
And I think that like, you can see people have like sort of tried to parse why that particular demo has like basically broke Fash at harder than any other. And I think that there's something to that it's like understanding it as innate and just sort of the way that things work. But then also I think being of an age where they're kind of like, and now it's my turn. Like, I'm in the driver's seat of all of this shit, and this is how it's going to be. Like, it's not my fault that I'm doing it because this is just the way that everything is. I think there's a permission built into that if you don't question it. The thing that I would add to what you said, because I think that my parents, I think, like, did sort of make that clear in some ways that like a lot of this stuff was natural and wasn't going to change. I think that it is not necessarily going to change, but I think they also, and I don't know how they got this in there because they didn't really, I don't recall some moment where I was like on the receiving end of a monologue that moved me one way or the other. It's like, you got to do your best against it anyway. Like you have to, like, even if you have to do things that you don't want to do to survive, like you also, like, you have a right to say no. You have, like, you should respect yourself. You should try to make decisions that, like, honor your values.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, I was trying to think. I'm like, yeah, that was there. I don't think it was explicit though. I think it was something that was kind of just like, yeah, don't like humiliate yourself for a job. Right. Maybe.
But it's like, it's funny because it's a continuum, right? Like, I think that I agree that there's like, no one would ever say that to me. And I appreciate that. But there's also this sense of being like, but you're going to have to do some stuff you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Like,
okay. Do you know what? Sorry to interrupt, but I just realized here's a lesson. I worked in supermarkets when I was in high school, and the first supermarket I worked for was Weiss. I had long hair because I was really into Nirvana at the time. Mm-hmm. Again, this place is everything, right?
Weiss, classic Pennsylvania market. A lot of people don't know about it. They should. Yeah. They're all,
Weiss, Redner's. Those are the two. There's your major
one
ones.
S. That's important.
Yes. 1S. So I had long hair, and they hired me with the long hair with just the expectation that I would put it in a ponytail at work. And I was like,
what
fine.
Department were you in?
Oh, everything.
Oh, okay.
Did dairy. I was a cashier. I got the carts. I blocked the aisles, swept, nice. You did a jack of all trades.
All the hits.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, 7 or 8 months into working there, the manager was like, hey, we want you to cut your hair. And I said, well, no, you hired me. You said it was okay. Why now suddenly? And it was just like an arbitrary choice.
Yeah.
That they wanted. They're like, we don't want you to have long hair. Because no other men had long hair. And so I quit, and I didn't tell my parents because I was like, well, I'll just try to find a new job. And then
teen strategies.
Yeah, and then I would have them drop me off there, and I would like go do something.
Go to the other place in secret.
Yeah, real like in a movie or something like that, where like the breadwinner loses his job and then he goes sits on a bench in the park during the day, like that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that didn't last too long because you can't keep that up, having your parents drop you off at a job you no longer work at.
Yeah.
And I finally
also every story where a protagonist does that ends with like family annihilation. Like it's not a good method to deal with stuff.
Yeah. There's some oil barrels in the backyard with 2 children in them.
Right. It's not whatever. Not the behavior. I just want to make clear that while a lot of the things that we've said have not been recommendations in this podcast, I don't think that anyone should do that. Don't pretend to have a job that you don't have.
No. In fact, yes.
Carry on though. Go ahead. Sorry.
When I told my mom, and she was like, it's okay, you can tell your dad. And I told him, they supported me in that decision. And I think probably because the stakes were so low. It's a fucking supermarket job. Like, who at the scheme of things,
right? They're not going to be like, but you've risen so far at Weiss.
So I think there was, again, they never said don't humiliate yourself, but they supported me in that. And I think that was at least some kind of like implicit thing in the back of my head.
Yeah.
That then blossomed into like, hey, have some where like I was really proud walking the picket line during the strike 2 years ago, around
it's a
Paramount.
Powerful feeling, even if you know that it's like the people that you're negotiating with are not necessarily in good faith and that like they would fly the plane into the mountain despite you for reasons that they have not reasoned through at all. Like, the act of standing up for yourself is powerful that way. Like having that experience of it as a kid and having the instinct, I don't want to put too much on you quitting Weiss after 7 months, but like good for you. Like, I think that is the sort of thing where, that's a lesson that you have to learn in life, and picking it up that early is like, that's a blessing. It's a solid thing.
Yeah. Well, how allergic We're right at the end. Sorry, I don't want to keep you too much longer.
No, it's all right. I'm enjoying the conversation, and my work day is over. So
I'm just curious about your relationship to authority because my parents, again, taught me about the Nazis and taught me about, look, everyone thought they were doing the right thing, and then they end up in camps, right? That taught me something. It's like, just because someone has authority over you doesn't mean they're right. And this is, decades before I read a Lick of Chomsky or something like that, right? Yeah. Where I'm just like, authority is arbitrary, and whether you submit to it or not is based on like, can you deal with the repercussions of what's going to happen to you, right? So I wouldn't do anything like I wouldn't like throw a brick through a window or something like that. But yeah, sure, I once took a skee ball from Bolorama because I wanted to have a skee ball.
Nice. Well,
why? I don't know.
Yeah, why does anyone do anything? But yeah, so I always had that urge to sort of see what I could to test it. I think to see that there was like there were things that I credited as like actual authorities, and to a certain extent too, like whatever it was I was trying to get away with from my parents, like I didn't like steal from them. That like there were things that like I respected them in a way that I don't think I ever like sort of reasoned through. It just wouldn't have occurred to me to do it. But there was a lot of other stuff where I was like, well, that's stupid. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. Mm-hmm. And that, again, that was a very sort of like, so I'm like just the youngest part of Gen X, like borderline, whatever, 10 months away from being the oldest possible millennial.
Yeah, I think we're technically called Zennials because I'm technically Gen X like you, mm-hmm. but like I've almost like if I watched, what was the Winona Ryder thing?
Reality Bites.
Yeah, it doesn't resonate with me.
No, me either. I mean, some of the music, I guess, but yes, it's true that like there was all those guys all seemed like really scary and old to me and stuff. The idea that like I'm generationally the same as like the guys in Screaming Trees does not fucking stand. Like that is just completely incorrect.
Yeah.
But I think that the authority thing evolved over the course of my life. I think as I sort of came to understand authority as something other than like the 8th grade science teacher mm-hmm. I didn't like, that like as you sort of get out in the world and encounter more types of shithead bosses. And again, that was sort of like another lesson from my like 20s that was useful there is you have a lot of bosses, you meet a lot of creeps. And so the understanding that every hierarchy that exists in the world is not just, that it is not simply because it exists does not mean that it is valid and does not mean that it's worthy of your respect. That's like a lesson that I, learned and kind of kept learning, like to the point where I have this kind of like, I think that most of the way that I understand what is right or what it is that, that I would want to do is like sort of by looking at the people that I consider the villains or, in my own sort of hero's journey, because obviously I'm the protagonist of reality in the same way that, you are the protagonist of your reality. I'm joking, but I'm not joking. I mean, it's like, that's how everybody sees the world to a certain extent. I know I'm not the most important person in the world, but I am, pretty high up there in my own life. But the bad guys that I've sort of come across, it's like there's some that are petty and there's some that are really dangerous. And like you sort of learn the difference between those two and figure out like what you're going to do about it. I mean, this was another sort of disillusioning thing. I mean, just while sticking with the labor union stuff was like the experience that we had at Deadspin where I worked there. And we wound up quitting en masse as a site. Right. But it was, that was an organized shop. Like Gawker Media organized first. It's the same union. So it's a lot of the same people that I knew from, going to bargaining meetings and stuff when I was at Vice, like were there when I got to Deadspin and I was glad to see them. But it was also like, we were dealing with a boss that wasn't going to respond. The levers for all, again, it was another case of the sort of proper channels being dead ends. All of the things that you could do strategically to advance your aims, they weren't playing with the same incentives as us. They didn't care. And it was like, so the idea of us being like, we'll withhold this unless you grant us that, they were basically like, we don't want the thing that you're withholding and we're never going to grant you that. And that I think was another critical bit of disillusioning, I think, to realize that there's people that you can negotiate with and there's people that you can't. There's things that you can, make a sort of like livable peace with, and then there's things that you can't.
Yeah. That reminded me of when we were picketing, and I won't name the CEO just in case this is apocryphal, but we had heard through the grapevine that one of the CEOs was like, I want this to drag out until December because I want to cause them the maximum pain.
I remember reading the quote. It was, like it's one of those like a Hollywood Reporter, like variety stories where there's like a million of the most insane anonymous quotes that you've ever seen in your life. But I remember reading that and being like, that's what you want? Like, wouldn't you rather make a fucking TV show? Like, is it? But there are people that would really, are motivated by other things.
Well, they're not. That's the thing. There was this new, and this Hollywood just, it happened late here, but it's just a mirror of everything that happened during the investor revolution in the 70s, where the old guard who wanted to kind of maintain capitalism and maintain everything and have it kind of go along as if it was just warm tapioca, that model kind of got destroyed. And then it was just like, the rise of private equity and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So eloquent, all that kind of stuff.
But I think everybody understands that it's like when you say private equity, all that other stuff is implied, like a deep annihilating nihilism that comes, and a cretinous nihilism too, that like this is a Hollywood.
Thank you. Yes.
Hollywood like being the place where it's happening last. I mean, it's like, as somebody who my relationship with this is that I have friends that work in that business and I like watching movies and I like watching television shows. I wanted to do that very badly. It's why I went to school in California. That was the work that I wanted to do. And I spent a little bit of time, working internships and stuff. And I was like, all right, well, these people are not my type of people. And maybe this isn't exactly how I want to do it. But like, it still seemed like it could be a cool job. Like, you get to make something neat together with other people. And then it's like, it took this long for that business to fall into the hands of people who just don't find that appealing at all.
No, it's just, there's a lot of CEOs now who, I won't name any, but just in case I have to eventually sell something to them, but who are just, it could be anything. It could be vacuum cleaners. It could be Trivial Pursuit games, whatever. It just happens to be that there's like glitz and glamour. They like hanging out with Angelina Jolie or whoever. And so that's why this, but they don't care. They, whatever you want to say about like, and they were psychopaths, all the old guard of Hollywood CEOs and studio owners. And a lot of them were just like maniacs, but they wanted to, they still wanted to make actual, movies.
Yep. Yeah, it's the thing. I think that's the distinction that you made about the investor revolution is absolutely valid there. I think that they understood, like, even though these were like, again, some of the like world historic motherfuckers, like it's not the sort of thing where anybody's like, Samuel Goldwyn, like, where have you gone? Like, those were sociopaths, but they understood it as being like, you got to make the movies if you want to fuck the 19-year-olds. Like, you've got to, like, this is like, if you don't do the product, you don't get the stuff. And at this point, it's like the people that are in charge now, I think, probably don't believe that they're basically like, the way, like, me getting my stuff is the most important thing. I don't think you have to make new stuff to do that anymore. What if you just did deals? Yeah. And that leaves us with a lot less cool shit to watch on top of everything else. But yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think this is what has driven me mad about the last, whatever, name the time period that the intensification, the stripping the copper wires out of the walls really started, is that we're moving towards this model in which all of these companies are subsidized by the government and the rest of us starve to death in the desert. Like, that seems to be like what, and they don't make, obviously there's like, Ed Zitron calls it the Roth economy, or Cory Doctorow calls it shittification, right? There is that to the point where the stuff no longer is worthwhile at all.
Yeah.
And they don't care that they're making stuff that no one wants to buy or movies no one wants to see, because shelve the movies.
And the public has been like officially boxed out of it entirely. The one I was thinking about the other day, I think I have time to write about it. You know how like Amazon Prime bought, like, they paid $20 million for the rights to make a documentary about Melania Trump. Yeah. And they're apparently going to release it in theaters, which to me seems like a very bad idea, because I feel like there's maybe 1,000 Americans that want to see that film.
That's like, generous.
But it is the sort of thing where it's like, but that being the like sort of the end state of all of this is like one rich guy paying the wife of another rich guy a bunch of money to make a movie about her that nobody wants. Like, if that's where it ends up, then like there's nothing to more in there. Like, that's just not a business that has anything to do with me. But I do think that there's still, I try to like not get too dark on shit like this. And especially like Defector, I don't like flack my site at the end of this podcast or whatever, but I believed that it would work for us to like leave Deadspin and start a subscription driven site because I figured that there were people that wanted to read still. And it wasn't going to be enough people. It wasn't going to be like fucking hockey stick growth. And when we met with rich guys to try to raise money before we launched, those people were like, you have an audience, but it's not big enough for me. That basically what they wanted was like us to become ESPN. Like they weren't going to put in $1 million unless they could get $100 million out. And that's not the type of business that we wanted to run. We wanted to run.
It's also not any type of business.
It's not any type of business. It's a stupid demand. If that's your standard for it, you know, that like it's not worth making. I mean, you can see this with, again, like the sort of the cretinous of this moment there where it's like, if you're not going to make a movie unless you think it's going to make $1 billion, like if it's just not worth your time, then you should be doing something else. Like, because that's also, there aren't that many of those. You know what I mean? Like if the only pleasure that you get is like a certain percentage of return on your shit, then like invest in index funds. Like let the rest of us that want to make things for people that want to enjoy things, like do it. And like, it's worked for us because there are enough people that want this thing to keep all of us paid and with health insurance. And, you know, it's growing. It's not growing at the rate that like, you know, a media investor would have wanted to see, but it's like, it's not going away. And that's like, I think that appetite, the idea that like people still want the things that people want. I don't feel like contemporary capitalism wants to serve it. I don't think that they honor that. And I don't think that they see what other people want as valid, but I think that also like that want is inherent. It's not going to go away. And so we just have to find other ways to sort of serve it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they think anything. I mean, cretinous, I use the word imbecile a lot. Like,
yeah, we gotta hit them with those 19th century insults. It's the only thing they understand.
These buffoons.
Yeah. If you're not saying something that Fraser Crane would say, then are you really even speaking real words?
Good God, Peter Thiel.
This is your worst idea ever, David Zaslav.
I don't think that they, you know, I've read enough essays of people who know these people where they're like, they think that they are right-wing climate realists. They know, and they don't think that any kind of intervention will do anything. So they're just like, fuck it. I'm just going to ride this wave out. I'm going to accumulate as much wealth as possible and let everyone else die. And I think that's motivating everything. Yeah. I think that kind of...
certainly at the core of Trumpism at this point. I think that that's his understanding of tariffs is that like, you're paying me. Like, and that is what it means for the rest of the economy. Of course, it doesn't matter to him. Like that's other fucking people, his least favorite type of people. Whereas in this case, the idea of like all of it, you know, like I'm recreating Mar-a-Lago over the footprint of the White House. I am like getting my fucking cut of every single thing that happens. The Justice Department's going to write me a check for $200 million because of how annoying it was for me. It's not the reflection of a reasoned politics any more than like, yeah, Peter Thiel, like trying to, you know, it's all just like, I stay on top. And I do think that there is a sense in which there is like a nihilism to that class that like, it's a luxury good. I don't think that like regular people can afford it.
By do you mean living, like existence?
No. Yes, that too. But I think also it's like, I can't think of the world that way. I can't think of it as being like, I got to get as much as I fucking possibly can. And that's the thing that's going to keep me safe or whatever. I'm not trying to.
Sure, you have human emotions. This is the thing. This is my theory based on like what I know about all of these psychopaths is that they are malformed. Yeah. They were not given love as a child, and it turned them into these shadow creatures. Like there isn't one of them where I've heard about, whether it's Bill Clinton or Donald Trump or Elon Musk or whoever. Like they all seem to have been these like little kind of emotional mutants.
Yeah. Yeah. There's very few of them where it's like, yeah, he's actually a good guy if you get to know him. Like there's not, it's like, no, they're not people. They're not real people at some level. Or at the very, and I think also like power and wealth have that incredible distorting effect. It's like whatever Bill Clinton was once like he is at this point, like just a pure creature of that.
Yeah.
You know, he's living in a toxic environment that he has adapted to living in.
Yeah. Well, it's that, whatever that kind of like unloved seed power is able to kind of like grow it into this kind of just darkness that can envelop everything. And without it, you just turn into this kind of like low level, like I own a used car lot somewhere and I treat my staff like shit. But like you don't have enough power over to. But if you can get into politics or you are able to exploit people and build wealth, or you have family money or something like that, it allows that to become world-ending sadness.
Yup. It's a good argument for a 100% tax rate at certain points, just for starters.
Yeah.
The other stuff that I would recommend, we will have to talk about while we are no longer recording.
Yeah.
It's actionable.
I've kept you too long. David, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, man. This was great. I really enjoyed the conversation a lot. So, thanks.
I feel like we figured out some moral stuff.
Yeah, this is it. I think this is a really useful. Anybody that wants to become as enlightened as I am now and as you are at this moment, I think they could get there in like 90 minutes of this.
Yeah. This is a speed run through the last 100 years of philosophy, of moral philosophy.
You're welcome.
Yes. Send us a thank you note, listeners, please.
Say thank you. Say thank you to Andy.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye.